Welcome to DentonRadio.com, powered in part by Classic of Denton. The views and opinions expressed by the show hosts and their guests are those of the show host and guests, and not necessarily those of the sponsors, DentonRadio.com, or the Denton Convention and Visitors Bureau. For more information, visit the Policies and Procedures page at DentonRadio.com. Thank you all very much for joining us live here with our friends at the Frank Buck Zoo. Once a month we sit down with these crazy animals and the animals that they brought and talk a little bit about what's going on at Denton Zoo just down the road over at the Frank Buck Zoo. How's it going, guys?
Going well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, you have a few cool critters with you today, so let's get some introductions on the crew as far as who has joined us, and we'll go from there.
So I am Susan, and I am holding Milkshake, the milk snake.
Okay.
My name's Amanda, and I am with Myrtle, the desert tortoise. Not a turtle. She says yes, tortoise.
Okay.
And then I'm Rebecca, and I'm with our blue-tongued skink named Aussie.
All right. And now, okay, so let's get a quick rundown on all of these animals and the unique features that they're all bringing to the table, because we've got quite the array of folks here.
Well, I have to apologize because Milkshake is being rather rude.
Okay.
You see what he's doing there?
Well,
Of course,
he's sticking his tongue out.
He's sticking his tongue out, exactly. Well, we tell kids, not something that we typically want to do. Not real polite when a person does it. However, the snake, it's very important. He is actually collecting information about his surroundings. He's picking up tiny little scent particles that you and I can't see and picking them up on that tongue that is actually split, so it allows him to pick up extra scent particles, transferring them from his tongue into his mouth, where he has something called a Jacobson's organ, and that's what he uses to smell with. He does have two nostrils, but he only uses those nostrils for breathing, not for smelling. He actually uses his tongue and the Jacobson's organ to help him detect the scents of his surroundings.
Okay, very cool. So we'll forgive the rudeness tonight, Milkshake, but you're on my list. Anyway,
Jake's got a list.
Well, I would have said there's a line that you don't cross, but that would have been weird. So,
so this guy, they get their name Milk Snake because long ago and far away, when people saw this beautiful snake, a lot of times in dairy barns, it was really cold in the morning when the farmers went out there, and these snakes were actually attracted to something else that was attracted to something in the dairy barn, not the cows and the milk, as people thought. It was actually, wherever there's cows and they're eating grain, the grain drops, and then animals come to eat that grain, and then there's animals that come to eat the animals that eat the grain. And so, unlike what the farmers thought, these guys were actually feasting on rodents as opposed to milk. They do not drink milk. They eat rodents.
Lactose intolerant. I
That's
got it.
exactly.
I understand. Beth Marie's is always calling, but you got to be careful about that kind of stuff. Anyways, so who else do we have with us?
This is Myrtle, and like I said, she is a tortoise and not a turtle. I know it's really easy to say Myrtle the turtle, but like we said, she's a tortoise because she has those big elephant-like feet, which helps her to get around. And she's, she seems pretty mellow, but she's actually kind of hardcore because she comes from the desert and she eats cactus, and she doesn't eat cactus the way you or I do, where we get to prepare it and remove the needles and everything. No, she just eats it whole, needles and everything, which is actually a pretty common adaptation of desert animals because they got to get their water somewhere, right? There's not a whole lot of water in the desert, so a lot of them do eat cactus, and she has places to go. She has errands to go.
It's that red thing in front of her on the table.
It does look a little bit like prickly pear fruit, which she would also eat. She would wait for it to get ripe enough to fall from the prickly pear pads, and then she would eat it and make her face kind of look a little bit like a horror movie. She'd be covered. I've seen it happen. She really enjoys her prickly pear fruit.
She really enjoys sweet potato, which is what she gets at the zoo most of the time, and that usually ends up all over her face, and she has to get a nice little facial.
She looks like she has lipstick on after she eats.
Yes. Bright orange lipstick.
Will you go, girl?
She's like, I will go.
I dig it. Well, you're right. That's hardcore, man. I mean, could you imagine somebody just looks at you with the needles on the cactus and just stares at you while they eat? That would be intense. I would, yeah. I wouldn't ask you for money.
You mentioned dig it. She can dig between 6 to 8 foot holes underneath the ground.
Okay.
So, again, another reason why she's pretty hardcore.
All right. I like it. So now what are the official technical differences between a tortoise and a turtle?
Okay, so again, not super scientific, but tortoises, they do tend to spend more of their time in or on land, around land. You're not going to find her swimming in the water. If you look at her feet, like we already mentioned, they're big and elephant-like versus turtles, other than maybe the sea turtle, which has more fins than feet. They tend to be skinnier, and they also tend to be webbed. You don't quite see any webbing between her nails here.
Gotcha.
And yeah. She does like to take mud baths, though.
Okay, so she'll do mud. It's not like
she appreciates
get
moisture.
Near water.
She just doesn't want to be submerged.
I gotcha. I gotcha. She has very intense eyes too. I feel like you're not lying about this hardcoreness here.
She likes that red spot on the table, and she wants to get it.
Hey, it's the original Independent logo. People are all about that thing. Okay, and so who's next with us here?
All right, so this is Aussie, and he is a blue-tongued skink. As you can see, well, as he was sticking his tongue out, pretty much for the same reasons that Milkshake does. He's got that really nice blue tongue, which is where he gets his name. Now he gets his actual name, Aussie, from the fact that he is native to Australia. So you wouldn't see him here in the States unless he was at a zoo. And I really like him because not only is he really nice and big, but he's also got this really big mouth. So if you can see, this is like the edge of his jaw. So he's got a really big mouth and a blue tongue. So when he feels threatened or scared by a predator, he's going to open his mouth as wide as he can and wheel that big old blue tongue around. And now, if you were a predator and you wanted a meal, would you want something that was blue and wiggling around kind of crazily? No.
Nope, yeah. I can say it pretty definitely.
Yeah.
Come on, Rebecca, do the hiss.
You got it? You got it like that? You got it like that?
He does kind of huff up a little bit, and he'll go...
There you go.
Okay.
So,
nice.
When he's feeling spunky or aggressive.
Okay.
And then one of the things we like to point out, aside from the fact that he has legs, which a snake does not, he also has really nice holes in the side of his head. Those are ears, which you'll never see on a snake.
Okay.
And he's also got really nice eyelids. So if you can see, he's blinking right there.
Oh.
He's actually kind of going to sleep, it looks like.
Well, I mean, he's a pretty laid back kind of guy.
You scratched the good spot. So
but so he has eyelids, and so he can blink, which you'd never see a snake blinking.
Okay.
No, just staring at you.
I've got to say, this is how you know that you guys are zoo people, because you're like, okay, other than the legs, here's the reason why it's not a snake. Where most people are like, oh, it's got legs. That's fine. Okay, cool. We're good. But very, very interesting. So what makes the tongue blue? Scientifically, technically, or do we know?
Jolly Ranchers. No, I'm just kidding.
Same. All right.
I actually don't know the answer to that question. Susan, do you? I think it's just a genetic thing that's developed over time. There are other animals that kind of have a bluish tongue, like our giraffes kind of have a bluish gray tongue.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in other animals that have a blue tongue, like a giraffe that spends a lot of time browsing, which means they have it out and exposed to the UV as they collect leaves and so forth off of trees. It actually acts as kind of like a sunblock, that pigment on their tongue. So I don't know if he sticks his tongue out that much, but perhaps, maybe.
Well, that would
I don't know. He
explain
came
why I'm
that
always
way.
getting my tongue sunburned when I fall asleep with my mouth open outside. I get it. Okay.
Don't do that.
No, I know.
Man.
Live and learn, live and learn. Okay, well, we've got some very cool creatures here. Anybody watching us live, we are going to be out in the Discover Denton Welcome Center here very soon, so that you can meet these guys yourselves and possibly even touch and interact and do all that cool stuff. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about some activities and events coming up at the zoo, because you guys have got a lot of really cool stuff happening, and you guys are just a hop, skip, and jump down the road. So what's coming up on the calendar at Frank Buck Zoo?
Well, actually, we just finished 2 weeks of summer camp in June, and we have 2 more weeks coming up in July. The dates, I do not know off the top of my head, but it is the 3rd week and the 4th week of July is when we have our next 2 camps. Last month, it was grossology was the subject, so that was really cool. We had a lot of fun.
What is grossology?
Well,
I mean,
you just have to...
All things gross.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of cleaning up after animals. Is that the deal?
I mean, to be fair, with animals, you don't have to just think about what comes out the other end for them to be gross. A lot of people can think of other things that...
That's not exclusive
be very
to
creative.
animals either. I got
yeah,
you. I got
we can be creative.
Very cool.
And speaking of creative, as a segue, our next camp is actually Creative Critters.
Okay.
And so it's going to be more artistic, photography, painting, crafting,
Awesome.
that sort of thing.
Very
There's
cool.
a lot of really neat things in nature that we can kind of mimic and
Yeah.
play with. So the other thing we have going on is we also have our teen volunteers who they applied probably starting back in January of this year. So we usually put up our application at that time. And then between April and May, we did interviews, and everybody comes in for an interview, tells us why they want to be part of our program. And we've been having a lot of fun with them since we've had a couple of weeks off of camp in between our camps this last week, right? Yes. This last week. And then this week. We actually have had some field trips that we've taken them on, and that's always a lot of fun, too. One of the places that we went this week was Blackland Prairie Raptor Center.
Wow.
Really amazing place, and I like to bring that up because we've worked with them whenever we found local birds of prey that were in need of some assistance, some rehabilitation, and to be re-released. So we always refer people to them. They do a great job. So we've been staying super busy, and we're super excited. Another thing we have coming up this summer, later on in July, and then open to a wider audience in August, we will be having a bat walk. And we actually got, we actually got certification training from Bat Conservation International, which is headquarters out of Austin. And it was about a 10-hour class.
Yeah, it was all day.
It was pretty intense. Dallas Zoo hosted it, and it was a lot of fun, and we are eager to put what we learned to practice and host some people walking through the zoo of an evening to help us find out what we have in our area through the zoo.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
be keeping an eye out for that. We do a lot of stuff on Facebook, but also on our website as well, frankbuckzoo.com.
Awesome.
So you can find out all the details, all the
Very
deets.
cool. You mentioned bats, and my eyebrows shot up so fast you could hear it. I love that. Very, very cool. So lots and lots and lots going on at Frank Buck Zoo. It's summertime. Perfect time to get out with the whole family and go check out all these critters. And I'd say this every time you guys are here. Frank Buck Zoo is such a pretty zoo. Just the layout, you've got all the great greenery and all the. It's just a cool experience to go check it out. So very, very, very cool place. If you guys have not headed out to the Frank Buck Zoo, you are missing out. But get down here to the Discover Denton Welcome Center first, where you can get a little sample platter tonight of what's going on just down the road. Again, at 111 West Hickory Street here in the Discover Denton Welcome Center, where we're broadcasting live on the glass. As soon as we wrap up here, we'll be able to interact with all these folks, and it looks like there's already a line forming outside. So get on down here quick and come hang out with us, with the folks from the Frank Buck Zoo. Anything else we want to touch on before we wrap up, guys?
So our flamingo feeding is a VIP experience that we only have so many slots a day, about 5 slots a day. We do it at 10:15 every morning. We can pre-book those, or people can come in if we still have slots available. So those are always popular. And then, of course, we also have our giraffe encounter as well.
Yeah.
So always a fun
Love
time.
that one.
Yeah.
Well, the flamingo feeding and the giraffe encounter is super, super cool. So I've gotten to do both of them, and I can highly recommend because it's a blast. It's really, really cool. And you get to be so up close and personal with these animals. It's just really, really fun time. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for coming and joining us here in studio. Again, guys, these folks will be here tonight in the Discover Denton Welcome Center. Do not miss out on your chance to hang out with the animals and have all sorts of fun on this wonderful July day. Have a good one, everybody. Well, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. We want to thank our partners and sponsors who made this show possible. And now stick around for a word from all of us here at Discover Denton.